Hi everyone, it's me again, and Squish Gang and some boxes are present. And today we're going to be talking about the recently changing environment around kind of the whole family channels thing and the world of child influencers in general, and like the mommy vloggers, family channels, the whole nine. Okay? But first, shilling time. Links, sources, ways to support the channel, including Amazon, Patreon, and the new YouTube members button. Woo! As well as any affiliate links, including the makeup on my face or jewelry that I wear occasionally, will all be down below, along with socials and an email to suggest longer form content. There is going to be information about today's sponsor, once again working with the people at Aura. So thank you to Aura for sponsoring this video. Your personal information is somewhere out there online. Mine is, yours is, lots of people's is. Lots of people's information is everywhere, including information of your loved ones as well. There are people called data brokers who seek out people's personal information and kind of sell it to companies, spam emails, things like that. Aura is a US-based service that allows for people to know where their information is and prevents spam companies, robot callers, hackers from accessing your information. While I personally cannot access it because I am Canadian, I would urge people who are able to access the service to try it out for themselves. You can use my link down below or on screen, aura.com/Mika's Rhetoric, to try out the service for 2 weeks. I would personally love to be able to use it because this week my email was sold to some sort of spam company to be signed up to a bunch of stuff in what's called an email bomb. And I was subscribed to 884 different services. Yeah, so I would definitely appreciate a service like this one, because Aura gives you security warnings where if your information has been compromised, and will automatically opt you out of spam and sign-up services on your behalf, which is something that would have been very helpful for me. Along with that, there are tons of other services such as VPNs, live credit score checking, password management, identity theft monitoring, internet parental controls, and overall malware protection software as well. So with many services and more, Aura is a really good service if you want to be able to up your internet security. Again, using my link, aura.com/Mika's Rhetoric, you can start your 2-week free trial of Aura and try it out for yourself. And truly, you'll be surprised at who has access to your information and where everything's going. Thank you once again for Aura for sponsoring this video, and any information you need will be at the top of the description. Thank you again for sponsoring the video. 3 parts of the video as per usual. Part 1, the recent legal proposal in the US. There's been legislation proposed against mommy vloggers. Part 2, we're going to talk about a TikTok mommy vlogger that has been exploding on the platform. And part 3, we're going to talk about some old news, why I kind of left it till the end. The daughter of 8 passengers speaking out against her mother. So let's get right down to the legal proposal stuff because it's going to be a doozy. So a couple of weeks ago, the first piece of legislation was proposed against the kind of current state of child influencers and the legality around the labor laws that surround these children. This has been proposed in the state of Washington. However, as we will see in the legal documentation, there are a lot of requests to bring this to a federal kind of legislation in the United States of America. This is because there's a bit of a fear that if they only have it in Washington, then that's not enough and they can just kind of relocate if it doesn't see fit to them. So now we're going to go through the annotated legal documentation. So I've kind of written notes on some of the easier parts and I'll put it in the normal people's English, as I typically do. So we'll get into that right away, no wasting time. So on the side of me here, I'm going to try to put either screenshots or a video of me reading it, depending on what's working, because sometimes my screen records don't import properly. So we'll see what happens. So this legal documentation is called Children Are Making It Big for Everyone Else. The Need for Child Labor Laws Protecting Child Influencers. And then there's just your table of contents and things like that, which we don't need to go through all of that. So they begin with an abstract. An abstract is typically just something that will kind of tell you what the whole thing is about, like a bit of a summary. So the parts I've highlighted are: currently, child influencers have no legal rights to the traditional child labor laws, such as the Fair Labor Standards Act of 1938, or state-based child actor laws. As a result, the risk of financial, physical, and psychological exploitation of child influencers is immediate. So one thing that we're going to see throughout this legal documentation as well is that the labor laws for child actors are still pretty weak in a majority of states. However, it doesn't have too much of an effect because most of like the child acting stuff is in California, which has pretty strict labor laws. However, they kind of demonstrate as well that that's not quite enough. So this is the overall proposal that they're going for. Specifically, this comment proposes federal legislation that would help to solve possible financial exploitation by requesting 15% of child influencers' earnings to be put in a trust account, similar to a Coogan Trust, which protects child actors' earnings in California. Further, the proposed legislation provides production regulations that will ensure that child influencers remain in school, whether traditional in-person schooling or homeschooling. This is really relevant because there was that, oh my God, those Christians, the Brandt family, that want to pull their daughter out of school at like 8 years old to help them take care of the kids, right? So stuff like that would not be allowed.
And so I feel like her going to school 2 days a week would be super good for her, and then her home 3 days a week would be so nice for all of us. Just like, first of all, seeing her more, spending more time with her, having like more quality time with her in the morning. Second of all, she's helpful with the kids, so I feel like having her here would be nice, just with another baby coming too. Like, she's just, it's nice having an extra pair of hands around the house, even if it's a 9-year-old, you know, and she likes it. Like, she likes helping me out.
They would have to prove substantial homeschooling for that child. Because imagine losing your right to an education because mommy vlogged too close to the sun. You know what I mean? Like, that definitely needs to be something that is watched over. Then it continues and says, imposing restrictions on the number of hours child influencers can work. So this could be for things like Ace Fest and stuff where they brought the kids. That would not necessarily be allowed. Requiring that if a child influencer is working on advertisement campaigns outside of the home, that parents must be allowed to accompany their child throughout all stages of the process. That is something that I'm not necessarily 100% sure, like, what parameters that's specifically referring to. So then they're talking about the ways that child influencers have been exploited by their family, and they quite literally cite Micah Stoff, and they tell the story about her. Now, I'm high-key waiting for, like, Awesome McBroom to, like, allegedly, hypothetically in Minecraft, like, take a hit on this, like, call a hit on her, like, because the way that, like, her huge screw-up is now being printed in, like, legal documentation. This is not peer-reviewed yet. This is just the draft, I believe, but we're still reading it because I want to go through it. So, take for example Micah Stoffer, a vlogger and blogger with a substantial number of followers at the peak of her career. Micah and her husband announced in May 2020 that they were rehoming their autistic son Huxley, whom they adopted from China just 3 years prior. Throughout the process of adopting Huxley, Micah regularly posted updates on the process of the adoption. Huxley is seen featuring products such as Dreft, Playtex Baby, and Danimals, with the Stoffers monetizing these posts. Additionally, the Stoffers make monetized posts detailing personal information regarding Huxley's disabilities and progress. Micah and her husband were investigated and later cleared from accusations of duct taping Huxley's hands to prevent him from sucking his thumbs. Fortunately, with the help of an adoption agency, Huxley was placed in a new home. Nevertheless, no state law entitles Huxley to any money that the Stoffers earn from the monetized post featuring him. Further, the 4 other biological children of the Stoffers and any other minor child influencers are not legally entitled to their social media earnings either. So that's the thing. This child that they made like millions of dollars off of kind of bringing to the platform, talking about and exploiting, will see none of that money, especially because now that they're not the parents of. I gather that even if this were to pass, what the family, like the new home of Huxley, would have to do, I would assume, is sue for damages. There is a really important line that I find is kind of the best summary for why this had to come to place in the first place, which states, as a result, there is a significant risk of financial, physical, and psychological exploitation for the child influencer. Then down the line, I also highlighted, some have already called for protection for child influencers, but this comment is the first to propose a specific federal legislation protecting child influencers. Financially, physically, and psychologically. Those are going to be your top 3 parameters for this whole structure and the direction in which they want to make these laws put into place. So then they have just a history section about the beginning of child labor laws, talking about Shirley Temple and her kind of acting career and how they didn't initially see acting as labor, more because of like the obscene riches and the, different set of physical demands and things like that. But then after a while, they were able to kind of put it into practice and law. That's why it had to become, is it Coogan, I believe, an amendment to child labor laws as opposed to being put into it in the first place. So after the different issues that came up with the child labor, the Coogan law in California had to be revised in 2000 because parents were taking money and spending it frivolously and leaving none for their kids. An example of this is actually Macaulay Culkin, or Macaulay Culkin, who was the kid from Home Alone or whatever, which a lot of people know who he is as an adult anyways, and the way that his family had essentially screwed him over. So now in California, 15% of a child actor's earnings must be placed in a trust fund, and judges no longer have any discretion on whether the contract will be set aside some of the funds. Additionally, 15% of the child's earnings must come from gross income rather than net income. So let's say you make $100, but then the manager gets 15%, and then travel costs $30, and then whatever. So then all you would be left with is about $55. The kid's not getting 15% of 55, they're getting 15% of 100, right? I just wanted easy numbers. Obviously, they're making way more. They wouldn't have made this if it was just $100. Because FSLA does not include or encompass child entertainers, they must rely solely on state law to protect them. 17 states have no specific laws for child entertainers, meaning that these children rely solely on general child labor laws. So that was what I was saying before, that some of the states are much weaker. Mind you, California does have pretty strict laws, and that's where a majority of the acting is. So it's not necessarily the biggest deal. However, because these mommy vloggers and stuff, and when I mean mommy vloggers, I mean like family channels, it's just they're often piloted by the moms, I've noticed. But point is, a lot of these people, when they are vlogging or whatever, they don't necessarily need to be in a specific place, right? They're not bound to things like sets and movie production studios and things like that. So if, let's say, Austin McBroom's whole vibe becomes illegal in California, all he has to really do is pack up out of Calabasas and go move to Wyoming or something, right? So that's why they want to pitch this thing federally as well, because you have to think about the practicality of how these laws would be put into place for people like child actors versus people like, influencers. So further down, it says, because social media is inherently on the internet and because the Congress has the power to regulate interstate commerce, Congress should enact federal legislation to protect children working within the realm of social media. So that was what I was just saying. And child influencers practically work in the same way that adult influencers do. They post about their hobbies, different personal experiences, while simultaneously marketing products for various companies. And then I just annotated, as you can see, potential room for loophole if the parents kind of decide that they're just going to do the brand deals. Then that might become a bit of an issue as well when it comes to where the kids are in the video, right? Because if they do the ad read without the kids present, then who is that allotted to? There's definitely going to be a lot of different things they're going to have to look into. So they kind of describe the possible phenomenon of why like these mommy channels keep pumping out babies, why you've got like 8 passengers, and why Catherine McBroom seems to have been pregnant like ever since I could remember. I think she only has 3 kids, but still, right? Because Ross Smith described children as the new social influencer, she remarked. Kids grow up and become less relevant. The sweet spot is between 2 and 4, after which they're not that cute. Research shows that videos featuring children under 13 years old receive as much as 3 times the number of views as videos not featuring children. This is also true if you see the family channels have absolutely crazy numbers, and these kids are always in elementary school or younger. So they're just talking about advertising numbers and values and how like it's gone up during the pandemic and that kind of stuff. And then they talk about like the way that the parents have loopholes based on them managing the children's accounts. For example, YouTube's terms of service says that YouTube is not intended for children under 13, and users affirm that they are over 13. However, the fact that brands are using children as influencers is a very clear sign that they're targeting children that they know are on these platforms. Social media platforms are likely turning a blind eye to these types of social media accounts because 1, they're technically run by their parents, and 2, they are creating a high volume of traffic on their websites, thus creating money for them. That is why the whole Jake Paul phenomenon in like 2018, of how he was like peddling merch to children and who he was kind of talking to and who he was pitching to was a huge problem. And Shane Dawson even asked him about that in that very lackluster series that didn't even feature Jake Paul until like 5 episodes in. Section 3, Congress must enact a legislation to protect child influencers from financial, psychological, and unsafe work conditions, as we talked about before. Physical, psychological, and financial. Those are the 3 factors that they're targeting the most here. Because child influencers are entertainers like child actors, they must be afforded legal protection. Without protection, child influencers may turn 18 and discover that their parents misappropriated their earnings or suffer psychological harm or embarrassment. This is really prevalent when we talk about people like 8 Passengers that were filmed, like where the mom, Ruby or whatever, filmed like the girl's first period, like how she was experiencing that. That is something that her friends will see, That is something that peers will see, and that is something that is quite embarrassing, these really private experiences. This can prove to be especially harmful because when children's real lives are publicized for many to see, child influencers are at risk at being exploited in ways child actors are not. The factors alone suggest special care should be afforded when drafting child influencer laws. This, again, is really prevalent because Macaulay Culkin in Home Alone was pretending to be somebody else. So if that kid had, like, you know, a weird date, or let's say, like, we're talking about teen movies, right? Like, oh, those awkward phases and those things, those are all fake. These things are their real lives. Like, when I'm talking about 8 Passengers and the daughter having her period, that was her real life. Or even the 8 Passengers when the son wasn't allowed to bed for 7 months, that's his real life. That's not like a joke or a play. And obviously some things can be fabricated, some things are fake, but a lot of the idea is that it at least seems real enough, which means that there will be real life repercussions for those kids. So the next section is the proposed legislation. And I just summed it up for proposes the need for federal legislation because state to state is too inconsistent and people can avoid the laws via relocation and different factors like that. So then they talk about trust funds and banking. The thing with that is I don't know how American banks work. They're just talking about essentially the need for the gross income amounts and the way that it would have to be split. And everything needs to be in best interest for the minor, including the brand deals and the ways that they have the funds and all that kind of stuff. Then there's just more of the trust fund consent if money needs to be withdrawn, all that kind of stuff. The responsibility on the entity to place the money in trust is on par with other states' legislations protecting child actors and ensures that parents or legal guardians do not have the opportunity to mismanage those funds. Additionally, once the entity has compiled the duty to put money into trust, they are relieved of further liability of the funds. Again, this is similar to other state laws. The requirement that 15% of the actor's gross income to be put into trust is the same amount required by many states' laws to protect child actors. So here is the last part I think I read of the documentation, but this is what the proposed regulation set will be, okay? No child actor under 18 years of age may be required to participate in child influencing. 1, in a manner that results in a failure to receive class credits because of unexcused class absences or any violation of state compulsory school attendance law. State Education Code, either as it is presently worded or may hereafter be amended to read, or of any rules of promulgated thereunder. 2, in a position declared hazardous by the Fair Labor Standards Act. That would be like things like risky sponsorships, for example, probably like dietary supplements for children. 3, during hours that would not be within the time set by the state labor code, except that the child is permitted with parental consent to work during otherwise prohibited hours, so long as a minor does not work in excess of 5 hours in one day or 40 hours in 1 week. 4, where the child is not provided with suitable place to rest or play. 5, where the child is sent to wardrobe, makeup, or hairdressing unless the child is under the general supervision of child's parent, guardian, or person having custody of the child if the parent, guardian, or person having custody is physically present where the child is working. That just means if they're doing like photo shoots and stuff, the parents have to be there in the whole process. The makeup, the costumes, they can never leave them alone with anybody. 6, where the parent, guardian, or person seeking custody of the child is prevented from being present at the place where the child is working while the child is working. Again, that just means they can't be alone. 8, for more than 2 consecutive school days during a school year in which the child is legally required to attend school without being furnished a tutor for the child's continuing education. The tutor shall be certified to teach in state by the state education agency or state board educator certification, and shall make reasonable efforts to coordinate subjects assigned with the child's classroom teacher. A, the instance of homeschooling, the parent's guardian person having custody of the child must ensure the law is maintained under the state law, the schoolwork. So that also means they can't have like a regular tutor. Like they can't have like their older sister tutor them, right? It sounds like they would actually need something a bit higher than like a base level, like level 1 tutor. So I'm certified for that. They would need what I'll be getting soon, which is called in French a brevet, which is a teacher's certificate, I believe, in English. And then, just added detail, they're not allowed to interfere with the raising of the child. Like, the government is not allowed to interfere with that. So that's where the laws might have a bit of difficulty, because the Supreme Court states that you're not to fiddle with the way that a family raises a child. So that is the TLDR of the legal documentation. I'm sure somebody like Emily Baker or whatever will go over it in, full detail. But I, after reading this, think that those are the only things that are super noteworthy for somebody who is not a lawyer themselves. So that is there, and I will try to find where I found it, and I'll link it in the description. If not, what I'll do is I will link like summary articles of it and stuff like that. So if we get into part 2 really quick, we're going to talk about the TikTok mommy vloggers, because that's a new way that I've noticed on my time, just being silly and scrolling. So recently, many mommy vloggers have found popularity on TikTok. This is likely because of the extensive algorithm allowing for them to kind of like reach their desired audiences. Given that TikTok is yet to be quite as saturated with family vloggers like compared to YouTube, there are some that have found success on the platform. One that comes to mind for me, because I've been seeing stitches all over my For You page, are called a family of nomads, which, to no one's surprise, they also have a YouTube channel with 750,000 subscribers, but their main platform seems to be TikTok, where they have grossed a following of over 2 million followers. They became infamous for having a family of 5 that lives in what I could best describe as some sort of like luxury RV. And naturally, because the family is always traveling in their RV, the kids are homeschooled, which that brings a whole other set of issues. Because they don't seem to have a resident state, so the state education laws are going to be different. I would assume they have to pin down to one, but it's quite unclear based on what I was seeing. And also, I personally have trouble with homeschooling because unless like there's like severe disability for the child or something that prevents them from going to school, because the parents didn't study as teachers, right? And studying as a teacher, a lot of it is about ways that kids learn and the interactions that you need to have and the structuring that needs to be there that these parents don't have. So it makes me doubt the quality of education in comparison to a regular school system. The kids also, obviously, if they don't have like a home address, have like no stability. And if they're always moving, they don't have any friendships outside of their immediate family, I would assume, unless online. This is what happens when you don't live somewhere for more than a couple of months at a time. The parents allegedly put a sum of money away from social media for their kids. I saw this in a TikTok that was put out where one of them took out some of the money for a gaming laptop or something. I'm also trying to avoid putting the kids in, unless one TikTok I'm going to have to, but that's the oldest child, Addison, I believe, who's 15. But yeah, and then they talk about how they teach their kids how to budget and stuff like that, which is all fine and dandy or whatever. Again, this kind of trying to show a perfect life out of something that most would agree is not ideal. So there was a viral TikTok of theirs that brought them to my attention, which was the oldest child, Addison's 15th birthday, where they asked for a hotel room. And I said, like, the only thing they wanted was a hotel room. So many are stitching it, saying that it's just because the child is desperate for their own space because they're a teenager. And I've gathered that Addison goes by they, them pronouns. That's why I'm saying that, based on kind of the videos I've watched. But I don't try to, like, look too much into the kids because they're not really the kind of component of this. But I'm saying they, them because that's what it seems like it was in the videos. Point is, people were stitching the videos saying, like, well, yeah, of course they want, like, an actual bed for their birthday where they can, like, sit up. Because they show, like, Addison's little, like, bunk corner thingy, which is quote-unquote their room. But they can't even, like, stand in it. So it's just kind of like a little, people described it as, like, coffin, actually. Which is a little bit terrifying, but I can kind of understand where it's coming from.
For Addison's 15th birthday, the only thing they wanted was to go to a hotel. So I rented.
For Addison's 15th birthday, all they really want is a real house and not to share a tiny RV with their family. That probably drives them crazy because they're a teenager and they need their own space. But they have no space because they live in a vehicle.
And like I said before, to no one's surprise, they also have a YouTube because the YouTube AdSense is infinitely more money than the TikTok Creator Fund, which is pennies. And a lot of countries don't even have the TikTok Creator Fund, including Canada, actually. The family defends the nature of their life based on the fact that a couple of the kids have said that they want to get an RV and be a nomad when they move out. But this is something that I hate and I've noticed about a lot of different kind of family channels, is their insistence that the children have a sort of autonomy in the process and that they are in on the decisions, despite the fact that often these children are way too young to have remembered or experienced a life outside of this, and that is the normal that they see. So to giving them no other option, maybe they just don't, and maybe all you're doing is telling them how bad it is to live in a normal house, then of course that's what they're going to be seeing as a reality. That is not something to be using. It's almost like in a way of using a child to manipulate your audience, and I really am not. So I think that a lot of people moved kind of to TikTok because the vast commentary community on YouTube that is based sometimes entirely around criticizing like family channels and vloggers, there is this sort of kind of desire to move to other platforms that are less saturated. And on TikTok, critique is not as available because of the time frames that you're allotted. And if you were to try to do like a quote unquote commentary video, a lot of people never got the 10-minute TikTok thing. I didn't, for example. I would have to stitch multiple 3-minute videos to kind of make my point. And the first TikTok is always the one that gets the most traction from what I've noticed. So you would not even really be able to have a consistent viewer base across all of your points. So because of that, I think a lot of them have their main platform on TikTok, and that's where they do their brand deals and stuff, because there's not the same ability to come for them, but then they'll kind of keep YouTube for the AdSense. But that's the end of the Family Nomad section, as we'll get to part 3. The 8 Passengers' Daughter Speaks Out. So for those of you who might need a refresher, the 8 Passengers is a family channel that became infamous on the platform a couple years back because the son, I believe Chad, was sent to this kind of outdoor wilderness camp thing that YouTuber Tozy had looked into, and I believe it was either a similar camp or the same camp where a child had actually died in. And there was also this kind of whole scandal about the same child having his bed taken away for 7 months for playing a prank on his younger brother. Now, a couple of months ago, about September of last year, they were back in the YouTube space being talked about because Shari Franke, the oldest child, said that she is not in contact with my immediate family. There is an article describing this where it shows the Instagram story that Franke posted, kind of commenting on all of this, and I'll put it on screen as well. Shari said the following: I know that there are many rumors circulating online about my family. While it is true I'm not in contact with my immediate family and I don't support the extreme beliefs of connections, please remember that this is my real family. Despite good intentions, speculating, rumors, and gossip doesn't help us. I'd like to ask for privacy for me and my family as we work through this very difficult situation. Please know that many are working on this situation and I hope that one day we can be whole again. Please respect my privacy as I work through my own healing as well. And Connections, for those of you who don't know, is this kind of parenting blog where Mother Ruby shares her brutal, rude, awful, seemingly, allegedly, hypothetically, in Minecraft parenting advice, which Shari is directly disavowing as brutal. Now, this is something that we kind of need to note, especially in pertaining to her brother Chad, who we have seen on the platform, but Shari was someone that we weren't necessarily paying as much attention to. So we can only imagine what the reality is like for the whole family if all we're seeing being put publicly are things as horrible as these outdoor wilderness camps, as well as a bed being taken away for months at a time. Also, if I remember correctly, it's the same parent that when the 5-year-old didn't pack their lunch, she said like tough cookies when the teacher called, even though she literally just films goofy little videos as a job and could easily go bring her kid a lunch. I just wanted to do that part quickly because there's lots of videos on that. I'll link, I believe, iNabber's video on it down below if you want to get more into the 8 Passengers Speaking Out thing, or I can elaborate on it further down the line as more developments come out. But I haven't seen anything past really September, October of last year, so I didn't feel like it needed a whole video. So in conclusion, this is the new reality for family vloggers and family channels, kind of the whole atmosphere that's been going on. Links, sources, ways to support the channel, including YouTube memberships, more information on the sponsor Aura. Thank you again for sponsoring the video with my link, aura.com/Mika's Rhetoric, will be down there as well. And anything else you need, including the email to ask about some more detailed content, all that's there for you. And I hope you have an amazing day, and I'll see you when I see you. Bye.
I don't think anything's worse than lukewarm hot fudge. It's like you're straight up lying.
What about kidnapping? I think that's worse.
At least kidnapping, no one's lying to you. You straight up getting stolen.
Yeah.